if you're looking for what they're about, they're not about anything other than paintings. And if you start to look for real things, then you're not going to find anything. I was thinking of giving up painting. And I'd got a place at Harvard Medical School to be a doctor. I became very disillusioned with being an artist at that point. And I think I was going through a period of depression as well, that I didn't feel painting was... I questioned the idea of painting, you know, all that crazy stuff when you feel you should be contributing. And painting didn't fit. The idea of being an artist was selfish. You know, I was in New York, and Betty Parsons, who was my dealer in New York at the time, insisted that I couldn't be in New York with little children in August, because it was the temperature, you know, it gets very... And I was living in a loft in New York with her. She insisted I should... She had a friend in Maine who had a cottage. We could stay in, so we went to Maine. That was 1970, I think, the summer of 1970. And of course, the cottage was just beautiful. And so that was my introduction to Maine. It was also so scenic that I couldn't do anything with it artistically. And I was also like, I don't know, like so much a studio artist that it was painful to look out the window. You know, I was like a contemporary, like one of these modern conceptual artists. So it was hard to see out of that kind of very narrow kind of. So I found it very really not aligned with the landscape at all. But I was a fly fisherman, and there was a river just there. And so it was a very comfortable summer. But there were people living in this little, it was a place called Head Tide on the Sheepscot River. And there were just a few houses. And there was a wonderful man there called John Dos Passos, who's a great American writer, by the way. He's a legendary writer. He wrote America, America. And he lived there. And he'd come past my little cottage, and we got to know each other, and people gasped that I knew John Dos, and it was like the first literally giant I ever met. And he educated me some, and so that was my introduction to Maine. And then I started to go back regularly. And slowly this affinity with Maine grew, and even when there were periods I couldn't go back, it was always there as this constant. But it was always like too beautiful, too unpaintable. And then eventually, I think in the 80s, I was invited to go to Skowhegan, which is a great art school, summer art school there. It's very hard to get in. People applied from all over the world. And I was invited to go to teach there. And I'd been in Australia for almost 10 years. And it was the end of that period. And I decided to Skowhegan's inland, different kind of idea of Maine, and I decided to go back and look at head tide, where I knew more about. And I nearly bought a house in head tide, and then I decided to go and look at the coast a little bit. Then I found this place, and I bought it, and I had still as a summer place because I was living in New York, and sort of grew on me, and I still couldn't paint all that beautiful stuff. I found all the mud and the stuff. When the tide went out, which it does dramatically, like there's a 12-foot tide twice a day. When the tide went out, all the mud and the crappy stuff's revealed. I felt I could get down, in that and find something to paint. And when the tide came in, I couldn't paint. In particular, there's, one tide where all the pollution comes in, all the plastic comes in, all the crap comes in, all the smelly stuff comes in. And that's, that was, that's where all the perverse stuff goes in. There were the clammers, the guys who dig in the mud for all the clams. They were all around. And they were doing, they dig like crazy in all the mud. And then they walk, at the end, they walk away and they leave all these wonderful holes and tracks and things. And I thought they were making much better paintings than I was in all this mud. So I would draw what they were doing, all the mud. And slowly I made some paintings, but always at low tide, always all that stuff. And then when the tide, I couldn't paint when the tide came in. Well, I trained here at Birmingham College of Art, and it was all figurative. There was nobody who taught anything abstract. We were there all day painting from the figure, basically 5 days a week, and I think as we matured through the art school, we were allowed to do some other kind of painting, but most of it was, drawing directly from the objects and things. But because we were adventurous, and we would, we were looking. We were encouraged to be independent thinkers and have an imagination, which was a great kind of education, and we would, looking back, our eyes were trained like incredibly well, in that we were drawing all the time, and so our eyes were like the eyes of the body of an Olympic athlete. I've almost always taught at the great institutes, and I've been blessed by that, and so I've met wonderful students, and it's, the more you give, the more you get back. So it's always two ways. It's always, the more you want to help someone make art, someone illuminate their ideas, it comes back tenfold,